On a Sunday in late April, with a warm wind and trees blooming as if they had never experienced sorrow, it all began. I can still clearly recall the morning, as if the universe was attempting to alert me in inaudible whispers. On my birthday, we all met at my parents' house. 30, they called it a milestone, but it felt like just another April day, complete with phony grins and excessive frosting. As usual, my sister Clara was late. She entered the room, just as she always did. Although they were just relatives, Clara's radiant skin and perfectly styled hair resembled something from a bridal catalog. The golden child was Clara. That wasn't only me who said that. In the past, my mother referred to her as our golden girl. I was the dependable one. I was responsible, keep quiet and thoughtful. I've always believed that such words had meaning and contributed to a worthwhile existence. However, I began to feel the coldness of forgetfulness that afternoon as I saw Clara spin into the room as if it were her celebration. When she desired something, she kissed both of my cheeks. She wished Emmy a happy birthday. I grinned as usual and said, 30 suits, you. This was because I had dedicated my entire life to mastering her messes, her emotions, and her charm. Nobody ever imagined that I was 4 years older than her. Clara could absorb light until you weren't. She made you feel thankful simply to be in her presence. Around the table we sat. My dad poured some wine. My mom distributed cake slices. Aaron, my lover, sat next to me with that courteous discomfort he wore to all family gatherings. Before he could raise the bottle himself, Clara moved across the table to refill his glass. She said softly, "So, Emmy, are you still at the museum?" The question pierced me deeply. I had a fantastic job. I was a good fit as a curator at a small but reputable art museum downtown. Quiet spaces, sentimental items, and noiseless storytelling. Clara's question, however, always made me feel as though I had made the decision out of fear rather than desire. "Yes," I replied with a smile. When Clara said, "I've been working on a new exhibition, Flemish portraiture," her eyes instantly went glassy. She looked back at Aaron. "That sounds intellectual. Aaron, how about you? Still working with that investment company?" He nodded and responded briefly. Too loudly, she laughed, and for the first time in a long time, I saw how her eyes stayed on him even after he turned away. I reminded myself not to worry too much about it. As usual, the evening came to a close. Clara vanished prior to cleanup. I was told by my parents that I was fortunate to have such a close-knit family. Aaron promised to meet me back at the flat, hugged me, and admitted that he was exhausted. Even if he spoke softly, it still hurt to be gone. I was standing in the kitchen with a hollow ache in my chest and a sink full of dishes. I was given a Tupperware container of leftover cake by my mother. She whispered, "You and Clara are so different, but she loves you in her own way." I had trouble sleeping that night. At midnight, my phone buzzed. Clara sent a message. "Cherished today. These days, you look radiant. I hope Aaron is aware of his good fortune." I spent a lot of time looking at the screen. The words were lovely. She was, too, and there was something in the message that made my skin tingle, like the nonchalant compliment and the reference to Aaron. The days that followed were a haze of quiet discomfort. Aaron held late-night meetings. I made no inquiries. I urged myself to have faith in him. By Friday, though, I was unable to stop myself. We hadn't moved in together yet, but we had discussed it. So I arrived at his place early. He handed me the key last fall, and I used it. He wasn't present. However, there was something Clara's scarf, red silk, neatly draped across his couch's back. Without thinking, I reached for it as my stomach churned. The air was still permeated by her costly orange flower perfume, which had a hint of bitterness. I took a seat, waited. Hours passed in the span of minutes. Aaron's face froze when he finally entered, not surprised. He didn't feel guilty. Simply ... captured. "Oh," he murmured, softly setting his briefcase down. "Emmy, I didn't anticipate Clara was here," I acknowledged. I spoke in an equal tone. "To uniform." He didn't dispute it, simply averted his gaze before running a hand through his hair, as if the weight of the reality was now catching up with him. "She expressed a desire to speak about you." My lips dried up. The room swayed. "She mentioned you had been acting strangely lately. Not happy." She was concerned. I got up while holding my scarf. "So she came here, by yourself." He paused. I passed him, went out the door. and entered a hallway that felt instantly colder than any I had ever seen at a museum. My thoughts were racing, not yet with conclusions, but more with the gradual growth of mistrust. Something had changed, something had started. At that moment, I realized that my life would never be the same. On that night, I didn't cry. The scarf was balled up in my pocket like a secret too sharp to handle as I walked home in the drizzle. I needed time, I told myself. Clarity, evidence. There was more than just a subtle aroma and a profound impact. However, the truth had already crept into my being and begun to grow. Aaron did not make a call. I didn't think he would. I put my keys in the bowl by the door when I returned home and stood there for a while, gazing at the apartment's darkness. I had the impression that I had wandered into a version of my life that was not mine. When the world seemed too loud, I always went to the museum the following morning. I was welcomed like an old friend by the marble hallways, nestled between the 17th century portrait gallery and the restoration room. My office was quiet and compact. It had the lingering scent of antiquity, dust, and varnish. I tried to concentrate on the catalog notes for our next exhibit while I was seated at my desk, but my thoughts kept straying. I gazed at a portrait of a noblewoman with downcast eyes and an incomprehensible look. Her face was framed by a lace coif. What secrets did she conceal behind that poise? I wondered what treachery she had either committed or watched. I gave up around lunchtime. In the hopes that the hot tea ritual would ground me, I made my way downstairs to the cafe. My phone buzzed as I was standing in line. Clara, would you like to have lunch together? It's been a long time since we had a proper sister discussion. My reward. I hovered my thumb over the message while I stared at it. My jaw tightened at its audacity, or the simplicity. Clara floats above remorse, rather than merely avoiding it. She pretended that nothing was ever important. It was all a game, an opportunity to play. Yes, I typed back, where she picked a small French spot along the river. Servers who referred to you as a mademoiselle, even if you had mascara smudged under your eyes, outside tables, and linen napkins. I was the first to arrive. I sat with the napkin twisted on my lap and ordered sparkling water. Wearing a white trench coat and scarlet lipstick, Clara looked like she had walked out of a travel advertisement when she arrived 5 minutes late. Like we were having cocktails before a museum opening, she slid into the chair across from me and planted a peck on my cheek. You appear worn out, she remarked, scowling a little. Is everything all right? I looked her in the eye. Are you and Aaron having sex? The words fell into the glass like a stone. There was a moment of silence. She blinked, her head tipped, then, too soon laughed. Oh God, even for you, that is direct. Is it accurate? The glimmer of her smile vanished. She glanced at her menu, then looked up again. Aaron's, complex. That's not an answer, she said with a gentle, theatrical sigh. You know that. We have spoken, you see, that's all. We struck up a discussion when I ran into him at that wine event last month. He appeared to be dissatisfied, claimed you had been aloof lately. I was at work. Clara bit her lip as if she regretted something, not the act but the consequences of planning our future. Emmy, I didn't plan this, did you? I asked in a firm voice. She looked into my eyes and said, You always get what you want. Something steely flashed behind them. Then it vanished. You're exaggerating, she remarked gently. Nothing has occurred, but something inside of me uncoiled when I heard the word yet. In brittle silence, we concluded our lunch. After paying the bill, she continued, Call me when you're calm. All the way home, that word kept repeating in my mind. I wasn't at ease. I felt chilly. I was accurate. I was recalling every small instance that I had written off as paranoid. Everything fell into place when Clara offered to help Aaron understand me better, complimented Aaron's watch, and borrowed my perfume. The internet existed. I had walked right into it, too. I was silent and alone with my thoughts for the entire weekend. Aaron wasn't texted by me. Clara wasn't called by me. I made a list while sitting in my flat, but it wasn't one of retaliation just yet, only of facts. Her actions, what she had stolen. She had stolen from me before. She had also stolen my high school attire, my letter of recommendation for college. I actively participated in discussions. My brightness, however, this was unique. Her goal was to steal my future. I wouldn't let her to. I went to eat dinner with my folks on Sunday night. Clara wasn't present. I inquired if my mom had recently seen her. She's been around, she remarked hazily as she poured soup into bowls made of porcelain. You two had lunch, she remarked. We did, and I grinned. Upon folding his napkin, my father said, "It was enlightening. Emmy, you've always treated her so well." Had I, or had I simply made things simple? I woke up that night and gazed at the ceiling. The wind rattled the windows like a warning as a storm rolled in, or perhaps a permit. I knew what I had to do by daybreak. Clara could have my life if she so desired. However, I would ensure that it destroyed her first. The sky was clear on Monday morning, and there was that special quiet you only notice when your thoughts are racing. I took more care than usual when I dressed. Hair tied back in a tight twist, silk blouse, and navy pants. Just a little lip balm and concealer beneath the eyes. No makeup. Clara used to quip that I dressed like a professor's assistant and that the version of myself she always described appeared capable, but invisible. I laughed once. Well, I didn't that morning. I took emails in the museum, calls were returned, filed documents, but I was thinking beneath the subdued beat of my routine, making plans. Clara always thought I was too weak to defend myself. Her first error was that. Her second error was presuming I was unaware of her methods. I was fully aware of everything, how she planned her life as if it were a show, her go-to lipstick colors. She flirted with the barista. She owed favors to the photographers. According to her accounts, I was serious, awkward, and a little delicate. I had gained access to the photo archives from a shoot she had done for a high-end skincare company by lunchtime. I contacted Milo, the photographer, via Clara's email, because I recalled that he had once praised her bone structure and bite. Yes, I had figured out her password a long time ago. She used them again. The childhood cat was the mother's maiden name. It was not an obsession, I told myself, but self-preservation. It was only a tool now. I messaged Milo. "This is Clara. Are you planning to get a drink soon? I would love to bounce some ideas off of you." "See within minutes," he responded. "Name the place." "I haven't seen your evil mind in a long time." Horrible. I hung on to the word. I visited Clara's place that evening, years ago, when she wept on sidewalks and locked herself out every week. She had once given me a key. She had never requested its return. The scent of guilt and eucalyptus filled her home. I moved carefully through the rooms, feeling both familiar and alien. She used to rehearse expressions in the mirror by the door, the polished white surfaces, and the piles of pricey books she never read. On the kitchen island, I discovered her planner. Wednesday, 2 p.m., a hair appointment. Thursday, a emphasis, heart, supper. Saturday, does the Emmys show open? She wasn't invited to the exhibition by me. Aaron must be the one who told her. She would go. Of course, Clara never missed an opportunity to get in where she wasn't welcome. I opened her jewelry box while I sat on her bed. I didn't have anything in mind. What she kept closest to her flesh was all I wanted to see. There was a locket inside. I had never seen one before. I opened it by clicking. A picture of us as kids is inside. I was 9 years old. She was 5 years old. Our hands were clasped. Together, she was grinning. I appeared perplexed. The bitterness came gradually, like smoke through a keyhole, rather than all at once. I believe I still loved her in my heart. However, that did not imply that I would spare her. I went home, leaving everything in its proper place. I then began compiling a list. Clara was afraid about what, being disregarded, being made public, being seen as typical. That would work for me. I booked a spa appointment under her name the following morning. It was upscale, extravagant, and the type of establishment she preferred to be seen in. I suggested a potential magazine article when I called the photographer once again. To test the extent of the delusion, I even texted one of her ex-boyfriends. Her cadence, her playful venom, her flirting punctuation, I did it all in her voice. It was instinctive, all too naturally. By Friday, I had one brand pitch, 3 cocktails planned, and an invitation to a private event she had always desired. I had no intention of permanently emulating her. All I wanted to know was how her authority was structured, how she employed innocence as a shield and charm as a weapon. I was constructing something, not really retaliation, not just yet. However, closeness and comprehension. I was surprised that she arrived early on Saturday, the night of the exhibition. However, she didn't see me before I did. Her hair was swept up as if she were entering a stage, and she wore a green dress with no back. With his hand on her lower back, as he used to do with me, Aaron followed her like a shadow. My chest didn't get constricted. Not now. I watched from the rear of the room as she introduced herself to the artists and mentioned me without my presence. She addressed the gallery owner saying, "My sister. Very gifted." As if she hadn't spent years making fun of that very quiet, always been a quiet genius. It wasn't until she turned to face the Flemish images that she noticed me. Across the display room, our gazes locked. At first her face remained motionless. The flicker came next. Recognition. Being cautious, I grinned. She didn't. Aaron joined me a little later. By themselves. He said, "Hey," without meeting my gaze. "I didn't think you would be here." "Really?" I said. He reddened and said, "It's my show." "I meant, I figured you might require some room." The other evening, I examined his face. "Aaron, did you share a bed with her?" He paused. That hesitancy was crucial. I didn't wait to hear back. Heart steady, I left, heels resonating over the gallery floor. I didn't require his admission. I had better already. Now, Clara was observing me, attempting to read my face, attempting to predict my next move. There wouldn't be much waiting for her, since I had finished playing the role of the invisible sibling, and she was going to experience the sensation of being obliterated. I received a text from Clara on Sunday morning. "You appeared to be not the same as last night. Is everything all right?" With my thumb lingering over the screen, I typed a single response, "Perfectly. You looked amazing." He glanced, exhausted. I didn't hold off until I heard back. Like a splinter just under the skin, I knew the message would stay with her. I went back to her world that afternoon, although virtually. I checked her calendar, examined her inbox, then logged back into her email. She had a full schedule for the week, including meetings, fittings, Pilates, and a charity brunch to which she had not yet sent an RSVP, with each hour planned like a stage cue. Clara lived in performance mode. I didn't want to swiftly wreck her life. Sure, it would be quick, but it would be forgettable. Clara was afraid of irrelevance rather than annihilation, so I began in silence. I started by responding to an email she had been pursuing from a boutique public relations firm. In her honor, I turned down a meeting, polite but vague, only enough to make them less interested. I then went to her cloud storage. There, she stored hundreds of high-quality headshots, portraits, and red carpet photos. I added modest tags to the metadata after downloading a couple. After that, I sent them to an anonymous blog that focused on bad PR for celebrities, not a scandal, just angles that don't look good. Her eyes were shadowed, a poor crop. The pictures that gave her a human appearance were the ones Clara detested. On Monday night, the first post went live. A cheeky headline, "Glitches of the Golden Girls. Fans are wondering about Clara Vaughn's new looks." I saw it grow. I felt no remorse. I was conscious. I lost myself in class at work. Several self-portraits of forgotten women, artists, obscure painters whose names had been obliterated by their fathers, siblings, or husbands will be included in the forthcoming exhibition. A pale-faced woman was staring straight out of the canvas with her brush firmly grasped in her hand, her eyes unwavering as I traced my fingertip across its gilded frame. She brought to mind a place I hadn't been in a long time. Sure, that evening, I made tea at home. Clara's least favorite flower is jasmine. It smelt like melancholy, she once commented. The recollection made me grin. I then started writing a script in my own notebook, pen and paper. Not to start a fight, a dramatic scene, no, for a narrative. I was the only one who knew some things about Clara, her patterns, not only her falsehoods or her affairs, her rewriting of history to portray herself as the victim. When people believed her, she grinned, she squirmed at anything too honest. The way she shrank from truth. She called on Wednesday. "Have you seen what people are saying online, Emily?" she asked. Her voice clenched. I pretended to be perplexed. "How about that blog?" I thought. "You looked fine," I said, referring to those terrible pictures. "Very real." A pause ensued. "You're not responsible for this, are you?" "Why would I be?" She let out a breath. "The reason is because you've been different. Far away." "I've been watching," I answered quietly, feeling cold. "What are you watching?" "Just observing." Before hanging up the phone, I let that linger. I anonymously provided a tip to a local gossip columnist that evening. Nothing unusual. There was only a rumor that Clara had been spotted outside a gallery arguing with a taken man. No names, no evidence, simply smoke. It was trending by dawn. "I don't know what's going on," Aaron remarked over the phone. She's behaving as though she's being pursued. Perhaps she is, I replied. Are you acting in this way? No, I replied honestly. I'm just ... not halting it. He fell silent. She isn't who I believed her to be, neither am I. He asked if we could speak face to face. No, I replied. I didn't require his story of redemption. I did not desire his culpability. Clara had begun to disintegrate by Friday. She rarely shared videos on her social media accounts, as she discussed the harshness of anonymous gossip, the strain of public life, and the potential harm of the internet. Her voice faltered. She had tears welling up in her eyes. However, none of them fell. I gave it to viewings, not because I was happy, out of the research. She was still performing. However, fissures were seen. There were differing opinions. A few backers, a few doubters. Some people questioned whether the rumors were accurate. One comment caught my attention. It's funny how the ideal sister always appears right before the spotlight fades. I didn't own that one. However, it could as well have been. She canceled her breakfast by the weekend, skipped her appointment for hair, abandoned Aaron. I didn't make contact. I didn't have to, because I couldn't speak anything louder than the stillness, and I had only just begun. Clara was radio silent by Monday of the next week. No posts, no images with tags, no happy cameos at shop openings or fundraisers. Like a theater abandoned to darkness in between performances, the digital world she so meticulously nurtured had become darkened. And people took notice. From afar, I saw as murmurs evolved into inquiries. Though I was aware of the truth, I noticed her fan accounts reposting old material and making wild speculations about a rebrand or a spiritual cleanse. Not that she was meditating, she was falling apart. And I was getting ready for something much more personal than scandal while she was busy licking her wounds. That morning, I spent more time than normal standing in front of my mirror. We had the same eyes, pale, gray, and keen in the light, but my hair was straighter and my cheekbones were softer than hers. I tilted my chin, relaxed my shoulders, and changed my stance. Not Emmy Clara. I rehearsed her facial expressions, such as the half laugh, the slow blink, and the head tilt that conveyed, I know something you don't. I had witnessed it countless times. It was mine now. I stepped into the Larchmont boutique she used to frequent that afternoon, and with just enough Clara-like charm to get by, greeted the salesperson. Cream, Burberry. I believe I left a trench here last week. I sighed a little as I spoke. The helper gave a nod. Obviously. You mean Clara. I grinned. It still amazes me that I forgot it, she said. To be honest, I need a new one before someone paints me as a mess. You and Clara could never appear disorganized. So far, I didn't purchase anything. I didn't have to. All I had to do was be seen. By Thursday, I had dropped off a neatly folded note at Clara's flat in a navy envelope. Not a stamp. No address. She hesitated because it was just her name in handwriting that matched mine. Inside, you said I was forgettable all the time. However, it began to seem like a blessing to forget you. You dressed up my life as though it were a costume. I've tried on yours now. It also fits. I didn't fully sign it. I didn't have to. She gave me a call within an hour. Before she could speak, her voice broke. What are you doing? This isn't funny, Emmy. I could ask you the same thing. Individuals are avoiding me. Aaron refuses to reply to my texts. I said, I haven't said a word, after one of my brand deals was put on hold. However, people are now observing. She was panting heavily. And they're seeing what I've always seen. Why now? Why do this? I gazed out over the city as I leaned against the glass. There was stillness, because you took something I can't get back. I didn't mean to. Yes, you did, he said, hardly raising his voice above a whisper. It's worse because of that, she sniffed. Your argument has been made. However, you have no idea what this type of attention can do to a person. People adore their imagined version of you, but they believe they love you. She trailed off. And when you slip, even a little, you mean when they actually see you, I replied. Don't act like you comprehend, she yelled. You never desired attention, you were unaware of its weight. No, I replied, but I understand how chilly it is to stand next to it all your life. Another silence. Her voice was shaking as she said, I want to fix this. For the time being at least, I trusted her. Clara wasn't a bad person. She was in a difficult situation. She had been all along, in dire need of attention, appreciation, and a way out. Desperation, however, makes people dangerous. I also didn't think she would change. Not at all. The only thing she hadn't given me, I gave her. A decision. I declared, I want a fresh start, no falsehoods, don't take the ones I care about. And if I can't, don't make my life fit your drama. I let the quiet do the talking. She ended the call. I brought my mom out to brunch that weekend. Only the two of us. Without Clara, we never did it. However, I came up with the idea this time. I made the payment. I decided on the window-facing table, where the light was soothing and the talk was more in-depth. How are things doing for you girls? My mom softly inquired. Things are changing, I remarked. I believe in a positive manner, she grinned. You appear to, more stable recently, as though you were at last standing where you belonged. I turned to face the street. A woman wearing a cream trench coat walked by. She resembled Clara from the rear. However, when she turned, it wasn't. My heart still skipped a beat. I uploaded a picture to my personal social media profile that evening. A coffee cup, a partially read book, and the statement, "Be careful whose story you let them write you into," were all included in this straightforward photo. They might not remember you. The likes arrived in an hour. The DMs did the same. From unidentified individuals, from folks I hadn't spoken to in a long time, from Aaron. I didn't answer, because regaining attention wasn't the goal here. It was about taking back who I was, and let Clara if she wanted everyone to think she was the target of some shady slander effort. I wasn't spreading anything. I was disclosing. And I had only removed the outermost layer. Retaliation was no longer the focus. Not precisely. Truth was at issue, and how pliable Clara's hands had made it. Perception, she used to say, was everything. She once rewrote a breakup narrative to make herself the distraught one and muttered, "People don't need to know the truth." I had spent too much time living inside her edits, but she said, "They just need to know what feels real." Her stories, my apologies, became her consequences. Beneath my stillness were her ambitions. I now had the pen in my hand. I didn't attend the show. For the tale, I went. The next action was delicate, nearly surgical. Clara had started a podcast, or had been, a chic show about women, image, and reinvention had been hinted several months prior. Her thoughts, her voice, an entire brand, a mirror into which she could talk. 3 pilot episodes had already been recorded by her, but none had been shown. I possessed the data, and she had stated that she was waiting for the right moment to debut something real. One night, while cuddled up with a glass of wine and headphones, I listened to all of them while they were sitting quietly in her cloud drive in a folder called Voice Notes_Final. People wanted to lean closer to her because of her poised, vulnerable, and self-deprecating speech, which she reserved for cameras and admirers. In the first episode, she stated, "I used to think being loved meant being chosen." She had borrowed the words, but now I know it means choosing yourself every day, from me. Years ago, during one of her breakups, I had said it while holding her while she sobbed and cleaning her face with my bathroom mirror. After I started it, she became quiet, as I recall. I assumed it was because the words really stuck with me. She had only been keeping them in storage. I now knew. I made my own recording that evening. I didn't require an expensive microphone, just my voice, steady, clear, and unsentimental, and a quiet environment. I once thought that quiet was a sign of strength, that it was honorable to protect the peace. I hesitated. That family meant forgiveness, even at your own expense. Give it some air. However, being silent renders one invisible. I didn't mention her name, but sometimes you have to write back when someone writes you out of your own story. I didn't have to. I posted it anonymously to a storytelling website that specialized in confessions and monologues, with the title, The Sister Myth. One private group at a time, I discreetly distributed the link, primarily women, primarily listeners who were able to identify the soft sound of a woman speaking the truth for the first time. It didn't blow up. It reverberated. It moved gently and softly from email to inbox. It was shared on a family estrangement subreddit. Afterwards, on a closed Facebook group for women dealing with betrayal. After a while, someone discovered the link, the wording, the parallels. Some readers conjectured that the mask of the Golden Sister was actually the unmistakable shadow of Clara Vaughan. There was no confirmation. However, the image was shaken by the rumors alone. The following evening, Clara sent me a text. "Have you uploaded that audio?" I gazed at the text. She wasn't upset. She felt afraid. I didn't answer. 2 hours later, I must speak with you, Emmy, please. In person. I waited. After that, I typed, tomorrow. In the museum. Noon. Come by yourself. The portrait gallery was my choice. The more senior wing, the one that nobody ever went to during lunch. It was solemn and silent. There was weight in the air. Standing between two frames, I saw faceless people looking down at us, their truths sealed in pigment, their lives long gone. She was late, naturally. She rarely wore anything other than black. No cosmetics. Her hair was tied back, just the way it was when we were kids. Clara without her armor. Emmy, she exclaimed, panting, why are you treating me like this? I remained motionless. Why did you harm me like that? Her heels reverberated in the deserted room as she approached. I aired. I am aware. However, this isn't you. I arched an eyebrow. Then perhaps you didn't know me. She glanced at the paintings before turning back to face me. Is this what you wanted? To witness my humiliation? No, I answered quietly. I wanted to be seen by you. The really me. The one you held at your heels as you shone. Her voice broke. I had no intention of surpassed you in brightness. That's the issue, Clara. It wasn't your intention. You don't intend to. You still do it though. She stepped back and said, and the fallout is always someone else's. To clean up. I saw it for the first time, and it wasn't guilt, not embarrassment. Recognition. I'm afraid, she said. I understand. We were silent for a while. I said, I don't want to be the bad guy. You never do, I said. She glanced down at her hands and said, but this time, you don't get to control the narrative. What are you looking for from me? Stop what? I want you to stop. Stop taking advantage of me. Quit telling my story as if it were in your own. She swallowed back tears and said, stop dressing up my wounds like they were a part of your costume. More than anything else, the statement I don't know how to be anything else destroyed something within me, since it was truthful. In addition, it was pitiful. My purpose is not to fix you, I stated softly. I turned to go to the door and said, I'm here to free myself. She didn't follow. The sun was glaring outside. Dust, early leaves, and the quiet sound of someone else's story coming to an end were all borne by the wind. Mine was only getting started. I woke up to silence the following morning. Silence has edges, not the other way around. But silent, like a fresh room's murmur. Something new. There's something awaiting. Clara did not send a text. She didn't give a call. No vague social media posts. No pathetic apologies scrawled in between crying practices. She had nothing to say for the first time in months, if not years. I pondered whether she was in mourning. Not for me. She was no longer able to market the version of herself. I brewed coffee. Bread that has been toasted. I felt as though I had finally arrived home after a long journey, unaltered, as I sat at my apartment window and gazed out at the city. I opened my laptop after that. The museum's director, Loretta, who was a reserved individual who almost ever wrote more than 3 phrases at a time, sent an email. Your voice was the topic line. Your vision. The body was straightforward. I heard the narrative. Twice. The woman who finally speaks is the one I wish to see more of. I didn't have to inquire as to how she recognized me. There is a sound to the truth. And the time you finally speak up is more powerful than any performance when you've spent enough of your life keeping quiet. I stayed late at the museum that day. When everyone had left, I was the only one left in the gallery, passing the silently preserved images of women who had once been spouses, daughters, and sisters. I stopped in front of a 17th century canvas whose hues had faded over time. The woman's hands were tightly gripping a book, but her face was inscrutable. My story came to mind. The version Clara gave was different. In her spotlight, I wasn't. The footnote mine. That evening, I sent an email to the storytelling platform, asking if regular submissions were accepted. I told them that I had more tales to share. They're not all about Clara, but they're all mine. It was a prompt reaction. Of course, we would love to consistently showcase you. Tell us which name we should give credit to. I was momentarily stopped by that. What's the name? Clara had condensed, softened, and molded the name to seem like a sidekick, but it wasn't Emmy Vaughn. Carefully, I typed, Emmeline Vaughn, complete, unambiguous mine. 2 days went by. Next, 3. I believed that Clara might have disappeared, sank beneath the surface, and retreated into the character that had always served as her lifeline. She might rebrand, relocate, or dye her hair. Or perhaps, just possibly, she might spend some time alone. However, she reappeared on the fourth day, a profile post, just a picture, a grainy picture of two young girls in a garden. One is blue, while the other is pink. Below is a caption that reads, "Sometimes you don't have the right to tell the narrative. Listening is necessary at times." I read it twice. She didn't seem like it. Not totally. Perhaps, though, that was the purpose. Not yet. I didn't like her. Again, perhaps never. However, a slight softening occurred inside of me, enough to let out a breath. I did a reading that weekend. 12 individuals in a quiet room above a bookstore, seated in folding chairs in a compact circle. I gave a speech on memory, about identity, concerning sisters. No names, only light and shadow. Then, an older woman came up to me. She lightly touched my elbow. "Your story felt like mine," she remarked. "Thanks," I said with a smile. Clara sent me one last message that evening. "I'm going out of town for a little, traveling to a location without Wi-Fi. Not forever, so don't worry. Just long enough to recall my identity while no one is looking. I am aware that you owe me nothing. For what it's worth, though, I apologize. This time, for real. Look after yourself." See, I didn't respond. Not because I was upset. However, closure isn't always accompanied by a bow. Sometimes a loud story has a quiet conclusion. Furthermore, I didn't want to include the last line. Rather, I switched off my phone. A candle was lit. Seated at my workstation, a new document was opened. The first line was typed. "This is how I ended up in the void she created," and continued to write. Like a promise, autumn came gently. The noise decreased as the days grew colder. No more inbox whispers, headlines, or pictures that are analyzed for meaning. The curtain had fallen, but not with cheers, but with silence, and Clara had vanished from the stage. I noticed that I was moving more slowly, taking a deeper breath, improving my listening skills. No explosions occurred, no last-minute battles, just the silent page-turning of a narrative I had taken back. We completed the Forgotten Women of Portraiture show at the museum. I saw tourists stop before the artworks, lingering over brush strokes that had gone unnoticed for generations, and I came to the realization that, when no one is directing the spotlight, there is a spiritual power in being recognized for who you are rather than for what other people think you should be. I was standing in front of one of my favorites one afternoon, a woman sitting at a writing desk in a modest, unsigned portrait. She had a straight back. She composed her expression, not pleading, not smiling. Simply said, "Present." A young, inquisitive, and perceptive girl, perhaps 20 years old, came up to me. "Was the identity of the painter ever discovered?" she inquired. "No," I replied. She nodded and said, "But I think she painted herself." I grinned and said, "She seems to know a secret." "She probably does." I sat in my office and checked my email after the show ended for the night. The site I had been writing for sent me a message that read, "Your last story is performing beautifully. Numerous people have asked us to hear more about Emmeline Von. Would you think about creating a whole series?" I kept my hand over the keyboard. I remained still for a long time. Not that I wasn't sure. Since I was prepared, I did type, "Yes, let's get started." The leaves crunched under my boots as I made my way home that evening under amber lamps. I stopped at the window of the small wine shop that Clara used to visit as I passed it. Couples who laughed too loudly were nonetheless served samples by the same sommelier inside. Even though pieces of my past vanished, the earth continued to revolve. In my coat pocket, my phone buzzed. A call from an unidentified number. "I heard your voice today on a podcast. Didn't initially recognize it, but I'm happy I paid attention. Aaron." For a minute, I stood there and saw my reflection in the windowpane. Emmy wasn't following Clara. Not the sister who is invisible. Only me. "Thank you for listening," I typed back. "I hope you continue. However, I'm not turning around." No resentment, no rage, just the facts. Before he could respond, I removed the topic. A tiny envelope reached the museum a few days later. No address for return. It contained a postcard from an unknown seaside resort. Cliffs over a murky sea, in a photograph. "I've stopped talking," written in Clara's handwriting on the back. "Simply listening. At that, you were always superior. Perhaps we can speak again in the future. Just as equals this time. See no culpability. Don't beg. Just one step in the direction of a better future. I put it away in a drawer. Not forgotten, but not required at this time. My first official series under my real name debuted the following month. Clara wasn't the issue. Not right away. Truth was at issue. Concerning shadows. About removing oneself from the reflection of another. People responded with letters. Not followers. Not admirers. Readers. Survivors. Sisters. The pen was finally in the hands of women who had been rewritten. And me. I continued to live. Not in her shadow. Not in violation of her script. However, in my own light. A bit more subdued. A bit more shrewd and completely fearless, after she has previously taken my life, and I had taken it back to recall my own, not to ruin hers.